As we continue toward the end of the Bleach manga, we are surpassing what the Thousand Year Blood War anime has shown so far. It's a little bit scary in that sense to be that close to the end, where I don't even have anime adaptations of these parts to watch, but I suppose this is how most people felt for a decade when they read the arc and couldn't see it in the anime. Although I won't have to wait nearly as long as you guys did for new episodes. It's honestly really surreal to have reached this point, but here we are. And we immediately get the conclusion to a fight that I'm so excited to see in motion in just a few months. A gentle reminder, if you are someone that is anime only, that only watches the anime, that hasn't read the manga, this video will cover events that haven't been in the show yet. So if you want to avoid spoilers, this is your chance to hop off and come back later. I won't take it personally, I understand. This is your chance. I'm trying to keep you safe, and I'm even trying to make the video's thumbnails less revealing going forward through the manga. But yes, this will be about the manga only for the rest of the video. Proceed at your own peril. To anyone that's still here, let's get into it. We've talked about Yoruichi and her brother taking on my boy Askin Naak Le Vaar, and how he has turned out to be one of the most dangerous, and in some ways, one of the most powerful enemies we've ever come up against. You might go, really? You think so? One of the most powerful? And yeah, we saw Naak Le Vaar beat Ichigo with very little effort, and he continues to be a real problem here. Askin Naak Le Vaar is low-key kind of a monster in the power department. It's just a quieter, less flashy kind of power, much like a dose of poison itself, and much like Naak Le Vaar himself is too, and he proves it over and over again. He can turn just about anything into a lethal substance, whether it's air, reishi, blood, whatever, and he can also make himself immune to all that too. Like I keep saying, it's insane, and the death dealing continues to be one of the most unique power sets in the whole series, and he's awesome. And let's take a moment to acknowledge that Naak Le Vaar isn't some piece of the Soul King like Gerard and Pernita. He was just one of the lesser Sternritter, and the only one allowed to ascend and become part of these royal guards. He wasn't with them before this invasion. He wasn't apparently worthy at the time, but he's absolutely earned his spot among them. But compared to them, yeah, he's fairly normal. He's like Batman being part of the Justice League. And arguably, Naak Le Vaar is the most formidable member despite obviously being physically weakest, standing alongside practical gods. Naak Le Vaar's got that Batman flavor of cool for that, I'm telling you. It's hidden behind all his other shenanigans, but he's like Batman. But yeah, back to where we are in the story. He's got Yoruichi and her brother in a really bad spot until Kisuke Urahara arrives to help, and also kind of be a little bit of a creep. I've always loved how nonchalant Urahara is and how sing-songy he speaks. His casualness in all situations just helps to make him seem even more powerful beneath all of that when he actually gets into the mix. We also finally got confirmation of the 5 special threats that have been referenced by the Vondenreich since very early on in the arc. Like, I think it's been a while since this was last brought up. I had my own guesses towards the start of the arc, but naturally those weren't correct since I'm me, but now we get the complete information. We knew about Ichigo, Aizen, and Kenpachi already, and now we learn that the others are Ichibei, which makes a hell of a lot of sense after we saw what he could do, and the 5th and final spot is Kisuke Urahara, which is awesome, and yeah, that makes sense too. And what I liked most is we even learned why each of them were given a spot and were considered to be special threats. They were worried about Ichigo specifically because of his latent abilities, which makes sense given how many times we've seen him break through ceilings and achieve new levels. His natural and sometimes sudden growth in power, including the different kinds of power he has, would be a problem and has been a problem, though not exactly a problem for Naak Le Vaar. Kenpachi was listed for his combat prowess, which obviously that makes sense. If there's one person you don't want to be in a fight with, it's probably him. Aizen was considered a threat because of his spiritual pressure, and considering what we've seen him do with it, even while just restricted and sitting down, yeah, that's fair too. They probably also should have taken into account Aizen's manipulation skills and all of the other many great things Aizen is very good at. He rolls high on deception checks. There's a lot of reasons you could be threatened by Aizen, but spiritual pressure does make sense. Ichibei was deemed a threat because of his wisdom. Considering his age and his knowledge, and especially what he's able to do with that knowledge, I'd say that's a solid assessment of him. He was very scary, very powerful, got the closest to beating Yuabaha so far from what we've seen. And lastly, we had Kisuke Urahara, who was deemed a special threat specifically because of his resourcefulness. And that is absolutely spot on for Kisuke, and probably his defining trait throughout the series. He always has some plan or contingency of some kind, or an angle that he's working. It's that part of him that makes him most likely, I'd say, the most intelligent character in the series. He's prepared for just about anything, and is also able to shift whatever he has planned however he needs to for whatever problem he's trying to solve. Makes sense. I'm glad we got a definitive list after that has been dangling the whole arc, and I appreciate also hearing some insight into the reasoning for it. It all made a lot of sense, so well done, Quincy's, for keeping decent track of these characters, even if they may have not gotten every bit of information, but more on that later. Naak Le Vaar being annoyed that he keeps having to fight tough opponents was pretty funny, pretty appropriate for him. He wasn't afraid really, just more agitated by the effort it takes to keep fighting strong opponents. Just give yourself some credit though, man. You've handled yourself so well with whatever you're up against, no matter how annoying they were to fight. You're doing great, Naak Le Vaar. I love you. But yeah, he's up against Urahara, and the moment this is kind of brought up, you know it's going to be an interesting fight. But there's unfortunately a specific aspect to this part of the story that I'm not very fond of personally, and that's the way Yoruichi is depicted. Now, obviously, since revealing her human form, Yoruichi has been presented as this beautiful woman, but even her first introduction in this form was her nude, you know? It was a funny moment for Ichigo back then, but obviously this was done for other reasons too, and all of the arbitrary shots of her booty cheeks are just kinda unnecessary, and I'm sure plenty of you will disagree with that. I know there are people that these parts really appeal to, but that's not what I'm personally ever really waiting for while reading manga. More than just the way she's shown, I'm really not on board with Yoruichi's power up here being activated against her will before kind of stripping her own agency away as a character and then straight up stripping her down literally besides some well-placed electricity. I actually would be really excited to see her animalistic side be focused on, because obviously she's got the whole cat thing, and this plays with that a bit. There's something potentially really fun and interesting here with her giving into that side of her, but it was weighed down for me by Urahara activating it without her consent and then being the only one who could control her. The whole thing felt gross. It seemed like it was being played mostly for a joke, you know, to really play up that she's mentally a cat now. But I wish she had been the one to decide to do this and didn't specifically be like, no, and then he do it anyway. I didn't like that. I would like this so much more if it was a transformation that she initiated on her own, instead of feeling like she's suddenly now Urahara's pet and beneath him. I get it, she's a cat, but I don't want that to be at the expense of her having a big moment, and unfortunately, it did sour this part of the story for me a bit. Yoruichi deserved to bring this about for herself, deserved to have a big final battle in this final arc that she's reaching a power on her own, not from a guy jabbing her in the butt with a needle. Like, she straight up becomes non-verbal because she's more like a cat now. Her bestial side does help emphasize that this even changes her reishi signature because she seems that much like a different person, but there had to be a better way to do this. There had to be. I don't like that she completely loses herself as a character and her own decision making. I really didn't like that. And I'm sure the anime will love animating this section and give the kind of fan service that many are waiting for, but I'd rather they alter the agency in this scene to make it feel more properly of a win for her character. And yes, it's another example of Urahara being kind of shady and willing to do whatever he has to make a plan work, and having contingencies for everything, so there is that. But I don't know, I just wish it was handled better, I guess. I just didn't like this whole section. I like the idea of Yoruichi getting a big power up and getting to be badass and, you know, having her big heroic moment. I just wish Yoruichi herself got to play a bigger role in that. Whatever the case, whether you agree or not, we learn that it's not enough in such a terrifying way, with a giant gift ball and Naak Le Vaar revealing his full Volstern dish in the middle of it. Cool moment, and his design is actually pretty interesting. The goggles here reminded me of like the Eradicator from DC, who was my favorite of the fake Supermen after Superman died when I was a kid. My brother and I had those debut issues of all of them where it was just the symbol throughout the titles. Anyway, his remaining attire is also giving him more of like a holy feel as well, almost like a monk. And I think he honestly has one of the more interesting wing designs too. When I first saw them, I thought they were going for like a life sign kind of thing, like in a hospital monitor. But knowing what I know now about his powers, they do look more like molecular, which makes sense for his abilities. His transformation just makes him even harder to kill too. He can adapt and adjust things however he needs to and incredibly quickly, no matter how well people try to counter. So all of the progress we made with Yoruichi shifting Reishi signature when she became her beast side, all of that kind of doesn't matter because he can now counteract that with this. I've talked plenty before about Naak Le Vaar's casualness when it comes to just about everything, but here we start to get a better understanding of his mindset. He is not doing any of this out of sheer loyalty to the Quincy King. It's not about loyalty, it's not about duty. To him, it all comes down to curiosity. He just wants to see what happens and what Yhwach will create after wiping the universe clean. That kind of inquisitive nature really solidified his place as the Von Reich scientist, or the closest thing that they have to one. He's obviously smart in how he has to analyze the dosages, but it goes beyond that, almost in a similar way to Aizen wanting to go beyond everything. Although Naak Le Vaar doesn't seem to want to be the initiator. He doesn't want to be the one that ascends to the top. He doesn't want to be the one that breaks through the walls or that shifts the universe on its axis. He just wants a front row seat. This desire to be there when the universe changes actually gives a lot of his actions a more understandable foundation. Maybe it wasn't just simple cowardice or trickery or wanting to avoid the fight that made him run away from opponents. Instead, his self-preservation and his desire to avoid unnecessary conflicts may have been in service to this goal. He wanted to survive so that he didn't miss the big moment. He wanted to be there and watch. And I love that for his characterization. It explains so much about the kind of person he's been throughout this whole arc, and it might even be reinforced by the kinds of powers he has. No matter what this universe becomes, he'll be able to take it in and adapt however he needs to. And I loved Urahara's response just as much, that a true scientist may be curious about something new being developed, but that they'd really want it to be discovered by their own hands. No, Mayuri, Urahara, and even Aizen, or even the generic Bount scientist in the filler arc that I'm going to be covering an analysis soon, all those guys, all those scientists in Bleach, develop things on their own and break boundaries through their own ingenuity, while Naak Le Vaar is waiting for someone else to perform the experiment, while he gets to study the results from afar. It's almost a reflection of Mayuri telling Xyloporo about how scientists should be, and I love that this gave us a look into Urahara's perspective too, because unless he's dispensing like training wisdom or technical lore, we don't usually get much insight into Urahara's opinions. We don't really know his actual personal perspective on a lot of things, because he's kind of a secretive guy. We've got glimpses here and there and can ascertain certain things, but yeah, it was cool seeing that in some ways he shares Mayuri's viewpoint on the importance of science and what makes a real researcher. Maybe they really are far more similar than they'd like to admit. I have raved about the death dealing a lot, but seeing how its effects can balloon into these huge territories or shrink into a small piercing that can instantly kill specific vital organs is just another horrifying showcase of how versatile of a power this is, and really pushes Urahara to the absolute limit, even blinding him by insta-killing his eyes. There's some fun symbolism to that, considering how much of a visionary and an observer Urahara usually is, and now he's literally lost his vision. As bad as it sounds, it's actually great to see Urahara really struggling and being put on the back foot. We've never seen him this desperate, to the point where he says the word that I'm sure everyone reading Bleach had been waiting the whole series for him to say. I know I was. Kisuke Urahara finally says Bankai. Yes, we finally get to see it in all its glory, and it turns out he's never used it in front of anyone that's still around. It's been just as mysterious in-universe as it's been to us, the readers, to the point that the Vondenreich didn't know about it at all. It wasn't in their data, which reminded me of Dr. Gero not gathering all of the information on his enemies in Dragon Ball Z like he didn't know about Super Saiyans. If you're gonna collect stats on your opponents, and you're gonna brag about it, and you're gonna form plans based off that data, you've really got to make sure that they're thorough and accurate, but it's also impossible to collect data that's never been shown. So there's that. I can't go too hard on them. Urahara has done a great job keeping this secret. And all of this mysteriousness helped build this up into the long-awaited moment that it was. Now, on to his Bankai itself. I never knew what to expect with Urahara's Bankai, but I hoped it would complement the ingenuity of his character, and it really does that. It's not just, a larger weapon or a big blast of power. It's something that's versatile and that he's able to use in a lot of different ways, which is the kind of thing I want from him. He needed something that showed both his adaptability and even a little bit of his more controlling nature. If you've been watching this channel for a long time or have seen my earlier videos, you know that there was a time when I was absolutely paranoid that Urahara was going to turn out to be a big villain and that he was manipulating everyone. So seeing his Bankai take the shape of this giant puppet woman who was a puppet master, it was reminding me of how I used to think of him as this possible big villainous puppet master that was trying to trick everyone. I'm still really glad I was wrong about that. I've accepted that that is not the case. I was being paranoid and delusional, unless Kubo is hinting toward a very, very, very last-minute plot twist. It could still happen. But the Bankai's abilities, what it can do, are something else. It can repair and rearrange things in its area of effect. It can stitch together his wounds to the point that he's looking like a Tim Burton character, but also open up wounds in enemies too, just spontaneously. It reminds me a little bit of Trafalgar Law's ability in One Piece, where the area becomes like an operating room where anything within can be altered. And I love that both these opponents have powers that have an area of effect, but one's radius kills while the other's mends, and they almost cancel each other out in a thematic way. I actually would have loved to have seen more of this Bankai, but I loved what we got. It was one of the most anticipated Bankai since early on, right up there with Aizen. We still haven't seen his, but maybe there's still time if he can get out of that chair. I was a little surprised that Urahara's Bankai didn't finish him off, but I've talked before about how Bankais often don't get to be the finishing move. It's kind of become a weird thing where Bankais just don't get the job done. What I appreciated about this showdown and this Bankai is that it really encapsulated everything we've ever seen from Urahara, and honestly explains some of why I was so suspicious of him. Many of the things that maybe felt like these shady machinations are just him preparing for all kinds of factors. He's always finding ways to fix things or adjust to circumstances, and his plans make a lot of things change around him, and they can be both a help and a harm, so it really fit with Urahara very well. And I know I compared Naak Le Vaar to Batman earlier, but really Kisuke Urahara is almost the Batman of Bleach. You give this man enough prep time and he'll win. Give him enough information and he'll most likely find some kind of workaround and win the day. But yeah, the Bankai isn't enough to beat Naak Le Vaar, and the actual resolution was pretty unexpected. Right as it looked like we're about to enter a new phase of the fight, my guy Naak Le Vaar suddenly gets his heart ripped out. And it was by Grimmjow. It turns out Urahara used his abilities to guide Grimmjow straight to the fight without Naak Le Vaar noticing, letting the panther pounce from behind. It was shocking, and I liked Grimmjow getting to be the one to take out Naak Le Vaar solely because we know how petty our boy can be and how ferociously he holds grudges. And it's been just enough time for Grimmjow being humiliated by Naak Le Vaar to kind of have everyone forget about him, only to then come back so violently. Grimmjow straight up rips out his heart and squashes it. It's crazy, and the kind of viciousness that Grimmjow thrives in, and it's finally something I don't think Naak Le Vaar can adapt to. Would I have liked to see Grimmjow more involved in the fight? Sure, and you could have maybe done something cool with him and Yoriichi, both giving into their feline-like natures, but I've talked about how blindly rushing into battle and getting wrecked was honestly very on brand for Grimchow. Because it is. So this surprise win Urahara helped orchestrate was a great moment for him, and I loved him trying to keep Naak Le Vaar dead after, because he seems to still be surviving even after his heart's ripped out, at least long enough to set off the gift ball around them. Of course, even as he's about to die, Naak Le Vaar tries to take them down with him, like he's a bomber with nothing to lose. It looks like Nell is probably going to save them, but Naak Le Vaar being fatal to the very end feels right. So sadly, I assume this is how Naak Le Vaar's death is truly dealt, so let's pour a poison glass out for my boy who legitimately has proven to be one of the most dangerous characters in the entire series. He brought down Ichigo, he went toe-to-toe with Squad Zero, he pushed some of our most powerful heroes to their absolute limit, and he was so entertaining the entire time. I loved the spin from a nonchalant guy avoiding fights to a guy that became such a problem. He was the most unassuming and seemingly lesser of the royal guards, but easily stands among them and might even be the most efficient one. We'll have to see how Gerard does, but I think it's safe to say Naak Le Vaar was an incredibly fun antagonist, and to think otherwise would be a fatal mistake. R.I.P., you absolute weirdo. So that'll do it. We got a long-awaited Bankai, a somewhat uncomfortable execution of Yoriichi's power, a win for Grimjow, and Naak Le Vaar's last stand. I'm excited to see how all of this is handled when the anime returns. In these last batch of manga analysis videos, I think I'll say what I hope the anime does, and for this, mainly maybe we have Urahara's Bankai get some expanded scenes, and maybe Yoriichi's transformation is handled a little more tactfully, but I'm not holding my breath on that one. Yeah, we'll be talking about this fight again in a few months when we talk about its corresponding episode or episodes in the summer, but that'll do it for now. As always, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. If you want to see more, there's hours and hours of read-alongs and anime reactions on the Patreon, so go there if you want to see more. As we move forward in the manga, I'll see you guys soon for the next video. Take care.